The Dallas Stars season is over. They fall in 6 games to the Vegas Golden Knights. Dane Lewis joins us to talk about what went wrong in the series and what the offseason looks like for the Dallas Stars next on the Locked On Road to the Stanley Cup. Gil Martin here. The Locked On Road to the Stanley Cup continues as we welcome back Dane Lewis from Locked On Stars to talk about his team's conference final loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. And Dane, what was the biggest reason that the Stars fell short in this series?
I think there's a few factors you could point to, but I think at the end of the day, you look at Game 6 and the Vegas Golden Knights came out with a purpose and they had a plan. They executed that plan to near perfection, and the Dallas Stars just couldn't keep up. I think they, in some ways, have also run out of gas a little bit. And I mean, I think that stretches to all three areas of the lineup with forwards, defense, and then especially in net. There's been a lot of criticism of Jake Ottinger this postseason as his numbers maybe haven't been where Stars fans have wanted it to be. But in all reality, this was his first season as a full-time starter. He played, I believe, 62 regular season games on top of, however many games he played here in the playoffs. I mean, that's a massive workload for anybody, let alone a 23, 24-year-old kid who hadn't been a full-time starter before. So I think there's some fatigue that factors into it. And the Stars had really given it all that they had in games 4 and 5. And I think, you mix in fatigue and wear and tear, and then also a Vegas team that, it was probably a little bit ticked off how games 4 and 5 had gone. And we're ready to move on to the next round. And I know a lot of people probably didn't anticipate the comeback truly being on, but I mean, you have to, I believe, give credit to the Dallas Stars for finding a way to rally after going down 3-0. If you had told any Stars fan that we'd be seeing a Game 6 at the conclusion of Game 3, I think a lot of people would have been shocked. So it's a bitter ending to what was otherwise a pretty great year in Dallas, and a very impressive first season for head coach Pete DeBoer.
No question about that. Was there one player or two players who you feel really underperformed in this series?
Yeah, I think one for sure was a guy who has gotten plenty of discussion, especially leading into Game 6, Mason Marchman. And I feel like that could be an embodiment of his season as well. Of course, a lot of things happening in his life off the ice. I know with his family near the beginning of the season. And so, of course, a lot of times some of that can factor in. Obviously, don't want to assume or say that is a cause for maybe a lack of production. And he dealt with some injuries. And, there were stretches where he did look great and he looked as advertised, but especially here against the Vegas Golden Knights, just a lot of turnovers and some missed opportunities. Even in this final game, had an opportunity on a power play in the first period that would have gotten the Stars back in the game. And he fans on a wide open shot. I mean, if he connects on the puck, and it goes in, and the Stars, I believe it would have been 3-1. And, maybe you have a little bit of life. It just a disappointing postseason, I think, really in general for Mason Marchman, who was a free agent pickup in the summer. He had a really nice year with Florida last year. Again, had some nice moments with the Stars. He scored 2 goals in his debut with the team in Nashville against the Predators. So I think that there's flashes there, but you mix in injuries and just a whole bunch of other things that Mason Marchman can't control. And I don't think it was an ideal season for him, or really an ideal series for him here in Dallas. But I mean, he's going to be here for the next few seasons. So I'm excited to see how he takes what's happened, in this series against the VGK and how he uses that moving forward. Because again, the flashes are there, and we know that he can skate well, he can score, and he's a pesky player. When he's at his best, he's a guy that you love to have on your team, but you hate to play against when you're on the other side of the ice as him.
No question about that. Any bright spots from this series, despite the loss, that the Stars could carry forward into the summer or even into next season?
Well, I think it was a relief to see Jason Robertson finally get involved. He was missing for some stretches of those first 2 series against Minnesota and Seattle, but he comes in and scores 5 goals in 6 games against the Golden Knights. And I think, you look at Jason Robertson and you look at the core of this team, and I think that there is some comfort knowing that the Stars are going to have a very similar looking roster next season. There will be a few changes here and there, but Jason Robertson signed a contract extension, as well as Jake Ottinger, before the start of this season. Rope Hintz signed an 8-year extension in the middle of the season. Miro Heiskanen is still under contract for the next 6 years or so. You have Wyatt Johnston, who is, 24 goals in the regular season as a 19-year-old rookie. I think that's really kind of the bright spot, is that you have this team that made it to the conference finals, that made it to game 6 of the conference finals, and you're going to get the majority of those guys back. The young guys that I just mentioned, but also the veterans, Joe Pavelski, who had a very nice postseason, Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, those guys are going to be back as well. And then, you mix in a pretty exciting group of prospects that could be joining the lineup next season. And I think that there's still a lot to be excited about with the Stars franchise. I don't think this was a one and done, like, oh, this was a magical run, but they're going to take some steps down next season. I expect the Stars to be just as good, if not better, as a team next season.
So do you feel this loss here in the conference final makes this season a failure for the Stars, or was this a good but not good enough kind of a season?
It goes back and forth for me, and I thought about this on the way home, and I feel like my answer could change, tomorrow, or if you ask me even within the next few hours, because I feel like just with how this team was built, who they had leading the team, it kind of felt like it was a Stanley Cup Finals or bust type of year. But at the same time, it's pretty impressive to have a new head coach with a new system and a few new players implemented as well. And to get as far as they did, I think that's pretty impressive, which we've seen. That's a trend for Pete DeBoer teams. He, goes to the conference finals or beyond, it seems, everywhere he goes in his first season. So it's not a failure of a season. I definitely wouldn't say that. But to say it's a successful season maybe feels like a little bit of a stretch. It falls somewhere in the middle of there's plenty to be happy about. The Stars offense looked as good as it's looked in years. We know that we have a solid core to build around in Ottinger, Robertson, Hintz, and Heiskanen. Those are kind of the big four. But at the same time, you feel like with this team that the expectation was to get to a Stanley Cup and compete and potentially win the Stanley Cup. And you have a few guys on this roster like Joe Pavelski who their careers are starting to wind down, and you'd like to see them win that championship that's eluded them for the entirety of their career. So it's definitely disappointing in that aspect, but I think also positive in a lot of ways that, again, there's a lot to be excited about in the future. This isn't just a flash in the pan kind of season. If, the Stars can find a way to build upon what they've started this year under Pete DeBoer.
You talked a lot about who's going to be back, but do you anticipate any changes as a result of this loss?
Nothing major. Again, a lot of those core guys are locked up, but you do have a few free agents and a few guys to potentially re-sign. Ty Dellandrea, the hero from Game 5, who scored 2 goals. He's going to be an RFA this offseason, and he was a first-round pick, I believe first-round pick for the Stars a while back, and they'll be looking to, I would be shocked if they don't want to retain him or keep him. This was his first full season in the NHL, and I think he played excellent and deserves a spot on this team for quite some time. And then you have a few other names as well. Luke Glendening, Yoel Kiviranta, and even some of the trade deadline acquisitions in Evgeny Dodonov, Max Domi. I anticipate at least one of those guys staying. I'm not really sure who just yet. Right now, I'd probably lean Dodonov, but I personally would like to see both of those guys stay if there's room. But again, I don't anticipate any major blockbuster departures. And even with arrivals, I think the Stars will look to make some moves, whether it's a trade or picking up a free agent, but it's not the juiciest free agent class coming up this offseason. But again, there's some nice prospects who seem to be ready to take the next step. Logan Stankoven, who was one of the best players, if not the best player in the Western Hockey League this season, played alongside Connor Bedard a while back at World Juniors and was, maybe the best player out there, not named Connor Bedard. So Stars fans have been excited for him to join the team for quite some time. And given what we saw from, his 2021 draft classmate, Wyatt Johnston, I think that there's no reason we shouldn't expect to see more greatness from another rookie in him and a few others as well. Maverick Bork, the 2020 Stars first round pick as well. He spent the majority of the year, or at least part of the year, with the Texas Stars in the AHL. A lot of promise there. So I think there will be a few changes to the lineup. But again, I think a lot of the key players will stay here. And it's just a matter of adding some depth and, trying to round out the roster and make it as complete as possible.
Well, it should be an interesting offseason in Big D. Dane, thank you so much. That does it for our Dallas Stars review here on the Locked On Road to the Stanley Cup. Be sure to subscribe to or follow Locked On Stars for free on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts, and now also available on SiriusXM on the SXM app. The Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.